faculty will say that'll work, then that's exactly what we'll do.
Video. For those who are missing.
Well, they can come see me. That's all right. At any rate. Yeah.
Can't a telecommunication student jump into a computer science field for a CPT?
You know, you probably can if you can make a case for the relevance. It can't be totally unrelated. Now, for instance, we've had students here that had a degree, their undergrad degree was like electrical engineering. And then they come and get the telecommunications master's, and they get this offer in electrical engineering. Great opportunity, but it's not what they studied. And unless you can make that connection somehow and convince your faculty that this is directly related, they aren't going to write that letter. You have to have the advisor's letter for CPT that says, we support this, it's directly related to your studies. And in the long run, you're probably doing yourself a disservice if you come here with an accounting background and get a degree in computers and now you're working as an accountant. That's not the reason you came here to study. And so it should be directly related. It really should be. One case where it's a little different is sometimes we have people who will get their telecommunications degree and then they'll say, gee, you know what? I think instead of just being a telecom professional, I'd like to be a supervisor. I want to supervise a whole group of telecom professionals. So they'll come back and get a second master's degree in the MBA in technology management. A nice combination, actually. If you've got the skills and things, that's a very nice combination. And they have a very high earning power with that combination degree. But now, so what do you get your CPT in? Is it one or is it the other? It's whatever you were most recently studying is what you're supposed to get your experience in. So if you did, while you were a telecom student, you'd want to get that internship or CPT experience directly related to that particular subject.
What if we're like instead of taking 2 subjects in the next semester, what if we take some extra subjects and it could be like dual majors?
You could do that, and we've had students do that, and that's okay.
Then we could
that
do.
Would be okay.
We could do any of the fields.
If
right?
you're in a dual major program, yeah, anything related to either of those two would be acceptable. Just not. You couldn't be out programming. You couldn't be out doing something different. But you know, it's really a matter of convincing the faculty. If the faculty say, "Hey, this is directly related," you're okay. Looking at this, obviously, if there's some other kind of cooperative agreements with the school and the employer. For instance, we had a company not years ago. General Electric used to be here in Utica. It was a very big operation. We used to have as many as 60 to 70 students at any given semester on internships down there. There were tons of them. And we had a real strong cooperative relationship, and students could get credit for their work experience in the workplace. And faculty would come down and visit, talk with the supervisors, look at you in your workplace, seeing what you're doing, and students would write up about their experience. And that was definitely a cooperative kind of a setup. That's what we talk about when we mean a cooperative setup. One thing about it is employment is definitely limited to a specific employer at a specific location. And I know that for some people who go with somebody who's consultant, and they may work at one, they may work at another location, different job locations sometimes. That's okay. You just need to inform me when you're moving, because you're working for the same employer all the time. You've got one employer. It's not like you've got 3 different employers. You work for one, and then that's done. Then you work for another, and that project is done. And you might work for the third. Just send me an email with your change of address and kind of who you're working for. And that's okay. I'll take care of the other stuff. Basic eligibility, you just have to be in good standing, good status, F1. and enrolled for at least 2 consecutive semesters. So that's kind of a kick. For everybody here, you've all certainly accomplished that after your first 2 semesters. And the exception, as it says here, is if you should be a person who is in one of those required programs, maybe your first semester, you're required to be on an internship the second semester. That's possible. It's not the case for telecom. English language students are ineligible. That would be somebody who was in an ESL program. English is a second language program, who came from overseas to just learn some English, and then they're not eligible for CPT. A job offer is required. You have to have a job offer in writing before you start the CPT process.
Any questions about just kind of what it is? Whoops, wrong way.
So then, it can be either full or part-time, as required by the curriculum. In some cases, the faculty could limit that, but in most cases they don't. They're happy for you to get a full-time experience. The one thing that does make a difference, though, between full and part-time is if you're enrolled in classes, if your academic coursework is not completed and you're enrolled in classes, then it has to be part-time. Okay, that's the one thing. Once you've completed your academic coursework, with the exception, they will let you go full-time if you have only 1 class left, and that 1 class is an online class. If it's in the classroom class, you cannot. You have to be part-time. Okay.
So, if I get an internship in some other place apart from Utica, and I don't have an online course, but I have a classroom course, then will they allow me to go or no?
No, they won't. Yeah, if you have a classroom class, you're considered a full-time student until it's done. And so, yeah, it's important to try and get those things out of the way if you can. What the faculty are very aware of what your needs are, and they'll usually work with you. And telecom is unique in the graduate programs. It's the one program that will offer credit for internships as well. So you could sign up for a 3-credit course in network management, get a job in network management, and write about the experience that you're actually getting paid for and doing a CPT in.
So instead of taking 2 subjects next semester, I can take 1 internship and 1 subject.
Well, it still counts as 2. That's the problem.
Okay.
Anyway, you could take 1 over the summer. If you could get 1 of them out of the way over the summer, you're free to go in the fall. Just another thought. You really, immigration's rules are 1 credit. It's not the college. You have to have. They won't let you. If there's more than 3 credits, you must be here on campus. But good question. So maximum 12 months of full-time CPT for your duration of studies. And that's important to realize that you have to keep track of how many months of full-time work you have. If you were to work part-time, you could work indefinitely part-time. There's no limit to part-time work. Part-time is defined by immigration as 20 hours maximum. Okay, 20 hours maximum. As soon as you work 21 hours, that's considered full-time. 20 hours is a cutoff. There is no full-time number, 21 is the number, or greater. But some people say, well, can I only work 40 hours? No, there's no limit. You could work 40, 60, 80, whatever you choose. Unfortunately, for full-time, that's right. Yeah, there's no limit. Now, a lot of people think that there's some kind of a limit.
But they say that after finishing 1 year of your stay in US, at present I'm allowed to work only for 20 hours on campus. But if once I finish this semester, they say that I'm allowed to work for 40 hours.
That's true.
So that comes under full time.
Yes.
So why do they mention 40 hours per week?
Who mentions that?
I don't know. I mean, the students tell us.
The
that
students.
Yeah.
They think 40. There is no such thing as 40.
So after 2 semesters, we are allowed to work whatever time we need.
Exactly.
Unlimited.
Yeah, it's unlimited. As long as you don't work more than 12 months of full time. If you go over 365 days, you no longer are eligible for OPT. That's the problem, because you just had 12 months of work. Immigration is very careful about that. They will count the days, so make sure you do, because you don't want to miss out on that. There is no limit to the duration of the part-time CPT. Just want to make sure we understand that. And the application procedure is pretty straightforward. You get a job offer, get it in writing, bring it to your faculty advisor, or if your advisor is out on a sabbatical or something, find the department head or another faculty who you're okay with. You know, I mean, between John Marth, Geetha, Priya, and Henry, they're available. Somebody will help you out with that. And then you need the letter that says the department approves this experience. It is directly related to your studies, and they need the offer letter because they should put in like the start date, the end date, and they need to put in kind of what you'll be doing, your title, and a brief description of your duties. That'd be real important. Once you have that, then you want to
Do you
bring.
need to be present here?
No, you can email it to them, and then they'll write their letter and email probably a copy to you, and they'll send the official copy to me. I have to have it from them in the form of on their letterhead and signed. It's got to be an official letter that I can keep for immigration, because I will need for immigration, as it says here, I will do a letter, kind of a cover letter to immigration. Then we'll create a new I-20 where we'll take that offer letter and we have to put in immigration when you start, when it'll end. A lot of companies don't want to put an end date in. We have to. I have to put an end date in to get you approved. The reason for that is CPT cannot extend beyond your graduation date. So I will always use that as the end date if you don't have one, or it's not in the letter. Now, you got to make sure that it's not more than a year away, or you're done. I would probably notice that and shorten it a little bit, because I don't want people to work more than, I don't want to authorize you for more than a year, and then you suddenly, you're in trouble. But yeah, usually I would go with the end date of your studies. That way, the next day, we would start you on OPT, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So you need that letter from the employer on their letterhead, signed. You can't just take an email from the letter from the company. It's got to be a signed letter. Send a copy of that to your advisor. Send a copy to me. So we get the letter from the employer, we get the letter from the academic advisor approving this, and then we create this new I-20. And we need a copy of your I-94, also a copy of your visa and your passport. The inside, front and back covers of your passport. Those are the documents that immigration requires for a CPT. Once I have all that stuff, boom, if you're across the country, I'll probably scan and send you that I-20 immediately. So it's possible to get this within a day. I've had that happen where somebody calls me up or leaves a message over the weekend, Friday night, they got offered a job, and they're starting Monday. They're going to be in Baltimore on Monday. And I'm like, whoa, because you really can't legally be in the workplace unless you have the authorization. I don't want to put anybody at risk. So what I would do then is, if the faculty, if I get the letter from the faculty, if maybe that's waiting for me the next morning, because they also send it to the faculty, I can come right in, do the I-20, scan it right to you, and then you can give it right to the HR people, the new I-20, showing them that it's authorized. The real one won't get there for a couple days because they have to put that in the mail. But you need to have, that will become your new I-20 then. And you'll use that if you travel, coming in and out of the country, anything. The latest I-20 you have is always the one you want to use. Any question about any CPT stuff? So I can do that right in my office in the CVIS system. Get you authorized and approved in minutes. Depending on, don't count on me always being here, because maybe I'm at a conference or maybe I'm somewhere else. But I'll do my best to get it done as quickly as we can.
What if you aren't there?
If I'm not there, it isn't going to happen.
Until you come back.
Until I come back.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the problem with a small office like this. because you're really dependent on me being available. I've gotten calls when I knew that, like, for instance, I went to the NAFSA conference. It's the National Association of Foreign Student Advisors, and the International Educators Conference. And somebody called me, like, the night before I was going to leave the next morning, and I was going to be gone for probably 4 or 5 days, and they wanted to start work immediately. I don't live that far away. I ran down to school and just did up their I-20 and sent it to them because I had what I needed, and they were able to get things done. But, you know, it's best, you really don't want to start work until you have that I-20, because you are illegal. It's not good to do that.
If in your after this semester there will be left with two more courses,
Yes.
so can we take those online? I mean, one in summer and one in fall.
You can do that. If you can take one in the summer, that's great. You'll need to, in your last semester, to be eligible to be working full-time, you need to have only one online class. You know, if it's a classroom class.
Class or a project, whatever.
Yeah,
But of 3
yeah,
credits.
project, 3 credits a project, no problem. Yep.
So, summer, one online course is permissible.
One online is
And
the
one
only
in
thing
fall.
that's admissible. Anything else? No.
So if we are registered for an online course and if we are in India, can we do that course or we need to be present here?
No, you can do it. You can do it anywhere. If you're going to be somewhere out of the country, always remember that for your visa, if you're out of the country for more than 5 months, there's a 5-month rule. Your visa will be canceled anytime you're out of the country for 5 months or more. And sometimes you don't think about that. We've had people that go home like in May, and they're there the rest of May, June, July, August. They go, oh, gee, I got a cousin getting married at the end of September. I think I'm going to stay, you know, because I'll be able to work it out with my professor because they're almost done with everything, and I'll just work on my research and stuff. If they're over 5 months, their visa's gone. They've got to go back and request a new visa, and they aren't real good about that when you've screwed up. And they're like, well, how come you didn't go back to school? You know, it's hard to explain that stuff. So I just encourage you, do not be out of the United States for more than 5 months as a student. So this would be a typical kind of a letter, and just write it out to USCIS, and I would add that we have enclosed as an I-20, endorsing the CPT, the offer letter, the advisor's letter, and then the other basic background stuff. And that's basically what it would be. OPT. Any questions about CPT at all? Anything? It's pretty straightforward, pretty clear. OPT then is really an opportunity for full-time work, you know, directly related to your major again. And off-campus employment related to your major, commensurate with your educational level. When they say that, they mean you have to be working at the level of you're a master's student, so at that master's level. And also, it may be used for any employer anywhere in the United States. Now, if you get a job somewhere else, like Canada or another country, you don't need authorization. I mean, you can always do that whenever you get that kind of an opportunity. But to work,
What about CPT? Like, OPT is commensurate with educational level. What about CPT?
CPT should be as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be. Yep. We don't want you being an MBA guy and working at the cash register at McDonald's. You can manage the McDonald's, but you can't, or be the assistant manager, but you can't be the guy at the cash register. That kind of a thing. It should be at the level of your experience in your education. So you really are at a disadvantage. I mean, you got to find somebody who will hire somebody from another country, somebody who the job has got to be directly related to your studies, and you know you've got a lot of uphill obstacles because as soon as they see you're an F1 student, they go, oh gee, what do we do with this? You know, and some companies just aren't sure. Well, the reality is, I'll take care of your immigration issues. They just have to treat you like a worker. There's nothing they have to do differently. And that's the good news, but a lot of them aren't sure. They think, well, gee, if I hire you, is immigration going to start looking at us now, and they get a little nervous about it sometimes. But the employers, anybody who's hired international students, typically, they really like them because they usually work very hard and do a great job. And then usually the employers will come back and say, do you have any more? So it's a good thing. Eligibility, F1 status, enrolled for at least 2 consecutive semesters. No job offer is required. It's based on proposed employment. Now that's different from CPT. And it says after 2 consecutive semesters. That would be what we call pre-completion OPT. Pre-completion of studies OPT. And if you work at that level, you can, but the part-time, as it says down below, conditions, a part-time OPT is deducted at half the full-time rate. And you can only work 20 hours a week, okay, until you're completed with your studies. That's the big difference. I encourage people, if they're going to get some kind of an internship or work, do it on CPT until you graduate if you can. If it's related, if your faculty approve it, if it's a good internship kind of a position, save your OPT for later, because it becomes important how much time.
The condition is we need to finish off the coursework, then only we can work for full time regarding OPT.
That's right. Once your academic coursework is completed,
But for CPT,
even if
only
the
2
thesis
semesters.
isn't done or the project isn't done, you can still work full time.
Oh yeah.
with
Only 3 grades are allowed, yes.
Yes,
Coursework, at least the coursework must be finished.
that's right.
Whereas for CPT, only 2 semesters.
For CPT, you must be enrolled. That's another condition. You must be enrolled. Even if it's a 1-credit continuous enrollment thing. Say you completed your number of research credits, you completed whatever, but you still haven't gotten the final project or thesis all finally written and done, and all the T's crossed and the I's all dotted and everything's perfect for the faculty. You would need to enroll in 1-credit continuous enrollment just to maintain your student status here at the college while you complete your degree. But yeah, important to do that. So no job offer is required. The conditions, maximum of 12 months for full-time OPT for your duration of status. When you say duration of status, on your I-94, the card that's stapled into your passport, it says D/S usually. That's what you want to see when they put in how long you can stay. And that means that you can stay for as long as you are in your status, for the entire duration of your status. Now, if they ever put just a date on it, that's not good. Because if you want to be an F1 student, and say you came as an undergrad, you get your 4 years of education, you get maybe a year to 2.5 years of OPT if you do the extension and you're in the STEM areas. Then you maybe say, well, I'm going to continue. I'm going to get a master's now. And you get your master's, and then you're eligible again for OPT for another period of time. You say, oh, gee, this was good, but I think I want to become a professor. So you go into a PhD program, and then you have OPT after that, and all that time, you're still an F1 student. So it could be a lot of years. Now, hopefully it won't be that many, because that's expensive, but it's possible. So that D/S is really important, that duration of status. As
Where
long
is
as
this
you-
D/S?
It's right on your I-94 card,
Oh.
the one that's stapled in your passport. They put it usually right with they stamp it, like where you arrived, it's say NYC if you arrived in New York City, and the date, and then they usually write right on it, D/S. So you're good to stay for that duration. Yep. The part-time, again, rated half-time. It may be used during vacations and breaks, either part-time or full-time. Typically, once a person graduates here, we generally, and we have told, immigration asks us, when do you graduate your students? We tell them that we graduate May 31st, August 31st, and December 31st. And we know our graduation date is not going to be on the 31st ever, but it's going to be probably a week or 2, maybe even 3 ahead of that. But what that does, I mean, this year, graduation's on May 5th. A couple years ago it was May 12th. And, it changes with the seasons here. And what it does do is it gives the registrar's office 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 15 days or whatever they have to determine, in fact, you have completed all your requirements for your degree. By May 31st, we can assure that you are a graduate or you're not a graduate. We'll know that at that point. So that's why we picked that date. Now, when it comes down to this, so they'll want to know when can you start. We usually start then on June 1 for they're a student up and they can work on CPT up till May 31st, but they'll start OPT on June 1. Or if they work all summer and they complete their studies in September or in August, they start September 1. Or again, if they get done in December, it's January 1. So, and then OPT, the first chunk of OPT, and all students in all majors are eligible for 12 months of OPT. And
So after our studies get finished, the next day we'll be eligible for the OPT.
after you graduate, yes, that's typically when people would start. There's variations on when they start. You've got up to 60 days to actually start work. You've got that 60-day grace period. After your studies are done, you can either hang out, close your bank accounts, get rid of your apartment, sell things that you had in the U.S., and go home. They give you 60 days to do that. Or 60 days to say you need to find a different job. You've got 60 days to do that and
But,
get involved. Or apply for OPT.
It's written that there's no job offer required.
No offer is required.
Then why do we need to find the job in those 60 days?
That's slightly different.
That's if you don't have to find a job in the 60 days. But for a person at the end of their OPT, that's real important. That 60-day grace period at the end, because they do only have 60 days to find something.
To ask for an extension?
Well, we'll talk about the extensions in just a minute, because the extension is obviously the 17 months additional for people in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics area, STEM area they call it. And that's on the back of your yellow sheet, the STEM. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Let me just run through this. If you got any other questions, please fire them as we go. It can certainly, it can be used, if it's in session, maximum 20 hours a week. Again, in the summertime, any kind of breaks, you can work full-time on OPT. After completion of all course requirements, and that would be typically our student situation, except the thesis, or equivalent for bachelor or master's, it may be part-time or full-time. In our case, usually after the academic coursework is done, you could start on full-time OPT. And after completion of all requirements for the course of study, it must be full-time. You can't say, well, I'm only going to work part-time and extend it out from 1 year to 2 years and just work 20 hours a week. It doesn't work that way. You've got 1 year to get your work in. Good.
But if we start applying for internships now,
Mhm.
and by May, if we don't get any, and I leave in, I'm actually planning to go to India in May.
Mhm.
So if I'm in India and I get an offer and I'm not able to come back like as soon as I get the offer and I have to join, so what do I do?
Okay. Well, that happens to people too. You know, you've completed 1 year of study, you go home for the summer, you've put out a lot of applications trying to find something, because if you can find a great job, you probably would stay over the summer, right? But you don't find anything. But then you get home and the phone rings, or they send you an email, we got this great job, we're going to pay you outrageous amount of money to come work for us. And you go, I want this. So what you would do then is if you choose to work at that job, let's say it's July 1st, they want you to start. And so you're home for a month and you decide, I'm going to do this. Email me, make a copy, email your advisor, and we'll process everything for the CPT, have it all approved, and send you the new I-20 so that you can just come back and go right to work, start right in wherever that job is.
So can I ask them for an extension for a week or so, because I'll have to return from here?
Yeah, well, sure. They'd understand that. They'd understand that. They're pretty reasonable usually, especially if you're out in the country. I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah, they'd probably give you a couple weeks to get home, to get back here, to get settled, because maybe you'll be in Houston, Texas or something, or Chicago. You gotta find an apartment, you gotta get settled before you can show up for work. So that's not unreasonable request. Cool. The application for CPT, this is a whole different story, whereas I'm for OPT. CPT, we can do it right here on campus. OPT is another thing. It has to be adjudicated, meaning the service center, USCIS, needs to look at it, look at all the papers, research your background, make sure you're all okay, and then they will approve it. But it's a 3-month process, about 90 days. So what they want are these forms. We'll fill out this I-765 form. I have a sample of that to show you. We also have, I'll create, bless you, a new I-20 with OPT recommended, and then photocopies of all your previous I-20s. So if you had CPT in here and there and different things, they want a copy of everything. And then 2 passport size 2-inch by 2-inch photos. And these will be front face, straight on, you know, like this, of you. And you want your name and your I-94 number, the number that's on the I-94, the one in the upper left corner of that. There's an 11-digit number with a gap in it, and then the last 2 digits. They want that whole number. And you have to write it in pencil, because they're going to take these pictures and turn them into like an ID card. So if you do it in pen, when they heat it to laminate it, it sometimes brings that color right through. They have numbers and your name written across your face, and you don't want that. So do it in pencil. Also, they want a fee. Of course, they want a fee. So $380 fee. I recommend you use a money order. The reason for that is if you just send them a personal check, they'll get it and they'll take your whole file and they'll set it over here and they'll go cash that check. And it usually takes 2 to 3 weeks for them to cash the check and have it cleared in the bank, and they get notified back that it's done. Your application is going to sit there for those 3 weeks. And that time is probably important to you. So I'd encourage you to send a money order, because if they see a money order, it costs what, about $1 or so to get a money order from Walmart or from the post office or something, 99 cents. They will process it immediately. Okay. At any rate, so that $380 is the fee, and you just make it out to USCIS. That's all you need to. You don't have to worry about the address or anything. They'll stamp it with their own information about, you know, the service center. And photocopies then also of your passport, your visa, your I-94. And the I-94, they want to see the front and the back of the I-94. The reason for that is if, let's say you were involved in some kind of a problem, a legal problem or something. If you went in the court, the judge would want to see your passport. He would take your I-94 out. He would write on the back of it. And so they want to see that it really says nothing. It should say nothing, and usually it does. Then also, you'll need to write a letter to USCIS asking for 12 months of OPT, optional practical training. Now, I have sample letters that other students have used that have worked well in the past. You're welcome to use that and just tailor it to yourself and make any changes in it you feel comfortable about, but you're sure welcome to do that. I've got all the things that you would need there except the money order and the pictures. You'll need to get them, and with the rest we can kind of create in the office. If you're on campus, I'd encourage you to make an appointment, sit down. We can have it done in less than an hour, the entire application. And if you've got multiple I-20s from different CPT experiences, your application could be kind of thick. It could be as many as 20 pages. And I just want to make sure that everything is perfect and you've got everything you need. When you send that, when we send that into USCIS, I want to know that you've got everything there. The things that can go wrong are sometimes they'll send back the entire thing or just a note saying, we only received one picture, or you didn't include the check, or you're missing a signature on the CPT experience from 2010. So you got to look it up and find out. And apparently, maybe you sent in one that I had signed and gave to you, and maybe you just took it and didn't think about it. You didn't have the sign on the bottom right then. I like to look at those things before we send them in, just to make sure we don't have those kind of problems. But still, it could happen. And those are the kinds of things that have happened at different points in time. What that does is just slows down the process. They kind of take your file and they stick it off to the side. Until they hear back from you, it'll just sit there. As soon as they hear back from you, your application goes right back on the table and they'll finish it up. But also, the time of year makes a difference with OPT applications, meaning a lot of people across the United States graduate and complete their studies in May. A lot. Hundreds of thousands of international students from every country around the world that study. They all get processed in May. In December, there's still quite a few, but nowhere near as many. So the December applications get processed much quicker. Instead, when you send them in, they say, oh, it'll take 90 days. I've had some come back in 30 days, all approved, all done, card, everything. It's amazing, really. And in May, we've had people that apply. I like to try and do the application as early as it's possible. If you want to graduate in May, I'd like to kind of turn back the clock to however many days they'll accept it, which is probably 90 days ahead of time. I'd like that OPT application to be at their office on the 90-day, or as close to that as possible. The trouble is if we send it too early, they'll just send it all back and say, no, it's not too early. We had a student that jumped the gun a little bit. He sent his, it arrived 2 days before that 90-day thing, and they sent the whole thing back. I couldn't believe it. So they're just holding it for 2 days. They sent it back, then he had to send it back. It was just, we lost a week or so just in the mail, going back and forth, and the aggravation. So we're really careful about when we send it in, but I'd like to have it in as early as possible. And then we just kind of wait for them to process this whole thing. It's over the years, we have never had a student yet be denied OPT. Everybody who's sent in an application has been approved. But we'd like to try and keep that record going because it's perfect. And that's why I like to review them. Sometimes people are often, say they're in Chicago doing a CPT and they're wanting to apply for OPT to continue with the same company. Typically happens. So we mail things back and forth or email, scan, make copies, whatever. I like to, when they have it all done, I like them to send it to me just to look it over quick, make sure it's perfect, and then send it right into the service center so we're all set and good to go. And that's worked better for just to make sure we've got everything that we need. The bottom line here, where it says, student may not leave U.S. while application under USCIS review. You must have a job offer, employment authorization document to re-enter the United States. That is kind of true. We've had a lot of people travel. We've had an incredibly good run of luck with people going home. And I know that I've heard horror stories of other places that have had students not do so well, get home and not be allowed back in, and different issues. What's important, I think, is to make sure that let's say it's this time of year, it's February, and you're going to graduate in May, and so we apply for OPT, and then in March you find out that your sister's going to get married back home, and you really want to be there. Well, you don't have your EAD card, you don't have a job. If you go, you will not get back in the U.S. without those two things, because it hasn't been approved yet. Now, I have had students that have said, you know what, I believe it's going to come, I'll take my chances, and they've gone. And once they once the card came, it came to me. We had it sent to me, and I just forwarded it on to them. We can do that, but it's a little riskier. Because if there's some kind of a problem with the application of any sort, they're not even in the country to deal with it. It just makes it tougher. And then you have to have a job too. So our people have been able to travel back home. Almost everybody has gone home on OPT. And we went to the immigration attorney over at Hamilton College just recently. She said, don't travel, don't leave the U.S. on OPT. And that's her recommendation, just because it's easier. You're not taking any risk. A lawyer is a risk manager. They want to limit any of the risk you can take. We have found that almost all of our students at one point in time or other has gone home on OPT. We have never had a student denied coming back. But always make sure that their visa is intact before they leave. Because the visa opens the door. If the visa expires, you're not getting in. And then you got to go back to have another visa interview, explain why you're there, why'd you leave the country, why do you need to get back. And if you have all your documents, you're probably going to be okay. But you need to have the I-20 that says you're on OPT. You need to have the EAD card that shows you've been approved by USCIS. And probably most importantly is you need to have a letter from an employer saying that you're on OPT, you're working for them, you're going home, and you're going to return to the U.S. to continue working for them on OPT. So and I usually send a letter along as well, just explaining all of those things, just to make sure. And we've had no problems. It doesn't mean there couldn't be problems in the future. I'm just saying that we've been very fortunate and things have gone very well for our students. But all their documents are in order. Everything's been good so far.
So we have to look at all these things before our F1 status gets expired. So once we reach the stage when it is about to get expired and we are in OPT, then?
Yeah, that's when it gets a little trickier, because usually you've been here. Many of you got a 5-year visa.
Yeah.
Mine is 3.5 years.
3.5. That's going to be trouble for you. You probably, if you're going to go home, you're going to want to do that before that visa is over. I mean, the visa, if you think about it, all it is it unlocks the door. It's the key to the door. If the visa is in place, you're good to go. They'll let
Okay.
you in. If it's not, you don't get in.
Suppose the visa is going to expire in May and I've been to my country, and can I return it in April?
That's up to the person at the door. The point of entry. I've heard, not here, our students have not experienced, but I've heard from other international advisors saying that they had students that were graduating on like May 15th. They were done, completed studies. They went home for a wedding and were returning on April 20th. And their intention was to come back and apply for OPT and stay longer. But they hadn't done any of that. And I'm not suggesting, I don't know what's right or wrong. I just know that in a couple of cases they were denied getting back in. And said, obviously your studies aren't that important, or you wouldn't have come home. You wouldn't have left the U.S. And they hard-nosed it and just said, your visa expires, your studies are done, why would we let you back in?
And the 90-day period will obviously extend the visa expiry. If that is the case, he is coming back in April and then applying for.
Right.
Then how will he live?
Well, they shouldn't have left. They should have done that earlier.
So,
That's the bottom line.
What if these guys they did apply for OPT,
They had their
but
EAD
the
card?
visa
Their visa was expired?
Yeah, about to get expired. Then
About to get expired in the 12-month period.
The only reason they'd probably want to go home in that case is they'd want to have a letter saying they have a job.
Okay, if we just forget about going home.
But their visa's gone? If their visa's expired, the visa's expired. It's not a big deal, as long as you don't leave. It only is important
We
if
can
you're
just
entering.
extend it here.
Oh, yeah. You could be here for 20 years without a visa, as long as you don't leave.
Oh,
but would that be illegal? Like we don't have.
No, it's not illegal. What you're asking for is to enter the United States on your visa. That's all. Your passport and your I-20 is going to say that you're a legal person here. You're working on OPT for 2.5 years, basically, 12 months and 17 months, and you're okay, you're legal, your status is intact.
And
Your
then,
visa
Okay.
may be expired.
That's like a key.
Yeah, hey, just think of it as the key to the door.
So-
You don't have it, you don't get in.
Oh.
And
Just
if the
remember
company agrees to sponsor for H1, then we can go back and get our H1B done.
That's right, and then you get your new visa.
So till we have till the company agrees, we have to stay without going.
If you don't have a visa.
Yeah.
It's dangerous to leave. You can leave, but you just can't get back.
Yeah.
So that's why, and it's not illegal to stay here without a visa.
I thought that if the visa period got expired, then it's illegal.
No.
So if we are running on OPT and the visa gets expired and they are here, we didn't go outside US. So would it be a problem?
You cannot go outside the U.S. if your visa is expired, ever. Unless you're going home to renew it.
Pardon, I don't
Yeah,
understand.
you cannot leave if your visa is expired.
So,
You can leave, you just can't come back.
yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah,
Unless
so
they
if you
leave-
leave, they won't let you back in, so you would be forced to go back to your U.S. consulate in your home country and request a new visa or an extension of your visa that expired.
Yeah.
But if they say no, you're done.
So if we are here and we are on OPT and we are getting our visa expired, so and even if the company is ready to sponsor us for the H1, so can we get it solved here itself?
I don't know how. Yeah, I don't believe so. The visas are only granted overseas. You can't get your visa here in the U.S., you can't get it extended. We've had many students go to Canada, just drive across the border, go to the American consulate in Toronto, and get their H1 stamped right there and just come right back and not have an issue. They used to do that
The
very
only thing
regularly.
we require is the job offer and the sponsorship from the company.
That's right. That's right. That's the important thing. They don't want people hanging out here that don't have jobs. If you got a job, that's not a problem. But otherwise, they just become, people on welfare and just stay forever and don't do anything, don't contribute. People that contribute are welcome. That's probably true most anywhere.
Huh.
And you guys are in great positions with master's degrees and great potential earnings for the future. You're going to be welcome. You have to have a job. They're critical. Any good questions? Any other questions? Before we move on from OPT here?
See what else. This is just kind of I ask the advisors, because I don't know where you're at with your advisor on completing your studies. So I ask the advisors for OPT to write some kind of a letter to let me know that you're making good progress towards your degree. And that's what this is. Just saying that person's a full-time student, they've completed their thesis, and they've satisfactorily completed the degree, and they will graduate in May. I don't know that. I have no idea how many credits I know how many, but I don't know how close you are with the thesis, with the project, whatever. So the advisor can just give a letter that says that. So that's kind of a standard. This would be the DSO cover letter. What's important is how it lists the student personal letter, the Form I-94, the filing fee, the 2 photographs, the CVIS I-20 recommending OPT. And I have to say, it's very important where it says endorsed within the last 30 days. Means it was created and signed within 30 days of when the application is received at USCIS. If it's not, they're going to reject it off. They're going to send it back.
So it should be latest.
It needs to be late, and it needs to be within 30 days. So I like to do that. If somebody's going to apply, I sure want them to come in and apply, and then get the application right in quickly. Yeah, help yourself to one of everything. It's all for you. Glad to see you can make it, Sukya. But that's the basic kind of prep. I use this more as a cover letter of this is kind of the steps, the things that are included. And I put them right in that same exact order because that's the order they want to review with them in from USCIS. That usually take my letter and just throw it out because it's your application. It's not my application. But it lets them know what's there. This is the I-765 form that we would fill out. And it's a little confusing for some people because it's the first time you've ever seen one of these forms. And immigration forms can be a little goofy. So I would walk you through that. And if you've got any questions, happy to help you out with the process. When we look over here, they're really looking for your name, and they say other names used. Sometimes people say, what do you mean, other names? Some kind of a con man or something? No, it's just like sometimes, in particular, some of the ladies come and maybe they get married and change their name at some point, so the names do change on occasion. The address in the United States, and that's where they're going to send back the receipt notice and the EAD card. I recommend for everybody, because most of you don't know where you're going to be. You're going to be working for this company or that company on OPT. You could work for anybody in the United States, so you're going to go with your best option. You may think one is really good, but you're really wanting this one. You may start with this one, and then a month later, this isn't where I want to go. I'm going to move to these guys. So you tend to change around a little bit. And for that reason, I recommend you put down my address, my name and address on that. They'll send it to me. I'm not going anywhere. And they'll always receive it at the college. When they're sending out EAD cards, the post office knows what they look like. And the post office will not deliver an EAD card just to a mailbox somewhere, because they'll get ripped off. They're very valuable cards, probably worth $10,000 on the black market. So they won't just, I can't just send them around, but they'll send them here. And then if I get your address from you, I'll send you an email and say, Raheem, your EAD card just arrived. Just send me the address that you want it mailed to. I may know your address, but I want to know from you today that that's the address you want it at. And then I'll put it in a SUNYIT envelope and send the whole thing to you. And that's the way I usually do it. The other stuff down this side is just asking, marital status, place and date of birth, Social Security number, and you all will have had a Social Security number, alien registration number, or I-94 number. Again, it's that number on that card that's stapled in your passport, the I-94. It's an 11-digit number in the upper left corner. That's the number they want there. Have you ever applied for employment authorization from USCIS? That's one a lot of people confuse, because they'll think, well, yeah, I worked on CPT. You want to put no, unless you've applied for OPT before. Because if you check yes, they want to see your previous EAD card, Employment Authorization Document, EAD, which is the ID that you get for OPT. And immigration looks at any kind of CPT, curricular practical training, as an internship. This is work. CPT is internship. That's the difference in their mind, and that's the way they approach any kind of CPT or OPT. So that would be, if you said, you would say no, unless you have been working on OPT for a year and now you're reapplying for your extension, then you would put yes. And which office? And so you would say, well, we applied at the Texas Service Center where all OPT applications go. And the result, it was granted. And the date of last entry into the U.S., you just look at your I-94 in your passport, and whatever date it was stamped when you flew back into the U.S. the last time, that's the date you enter. And then the place of last entry, probably New York City, Detroit, Boston, wherever you flew into. The manner of last entry, F1 student. And current immigration status, F1 student. So it's pretty straight. Down here is where people don't have a clue. You would have no way of knowing what to put in those little parentheses. This is where they're asking, they use this form for multiple things, but we're using it for OPT. So by putting in the correct letters and numbers, we're going to let them know that we're applying for OPT the first time. And then it would be a small c, the letter 3, and then over here, in the last one, we would put A if it's pre-completion of studies, B if it's after graduation and see if it's an extension. Okay? So for everybody here, it would be a B, capital B. We only use this one if you're applying for an extension. And they're asking you here your degree. They want to make sure it's a STEM related degree. The employer name as listed in E-Verify. Brings up the whole E-Verify thing. You have to have the employer's name as it's listed, and then the employer's identification number in E-Verify. So you need their E-Verify number. If that company is not in E-Verify, you will not get an extension. Okay? So that's an important one. Now, E-Verify, what is that all about, right? Electronic verification by immigration of a company that they do not hire illegals. That's basically what it is. So USCIS would like every company in the United States to verify once a year that they don't hire illegal aliens. That's all they're really asking them to do. It's not a big deal. It is if they have 20,000 employees, because they've got to verify everybody. But if it's a smaller company, it's very easy for them to verify the people they have are all they're legal aliens, or they're F1 students, they've got permission to work, or they're citizens. It's pretty straightforward. Some employers kind of have the feeling that, gee, I don't want immigration looking over my shoulder. I don't want to get involved in this E-Verify thing. Well, the reality is, if they're informing, if any business is informing immigration every year that they don't hire illegal aliens, they don't look at them. It's the ones that don't do E-Verify that they're going to be more curious about. So in reality, it's better for them to be E-Verified. And it certainly opens up the doors for you guys then to be able to work for them. It doesn't mean you can't work for a company that's not E-Verified. You certainly can. The problem is you cannot stay with them on an extension. Okay? So you can work for anybody, but you need to have a conversation at some point, preferably before you're employed, just to find out what their policy is about E-Verify and what their policy is about extensions. Because and also, do they hire people as F1s, and do they ever sponsor them as work visas, H-1Bs? And the literature that you all have talks pretty extensively about that. There's a white piece of paper that says an easy guide to hiring temporary employees or internationals. That one really talks to the business, what they need to do, and what's important in hiring somebody who's not a citizen, and how they can do it legally. I talk to employers all the time. Almost every week I'll get a call from somebody who's out there that's applying for a job with a company, and they just haven't hired an international student before, so they're not sure. What does this mean? So I always tell the students, have them call me, or give them my card or something, and they do. And so I talk to them and just explain the process of how on CPT I'll take care of all the immigration work. On OPT, I'll take care of all the immigration work. You'll provide a copy of your I-20. You'll provide them the EAD card once you're authorized for OPT, and they don't have to do anything but treat you well. They'll treat you like any other employee. So it makes it easier for them once they know that. And their first step will be after OPT extension, or during the OPT at some point, to decide whether or not they're going to continue you as a worker in the H-1B visa status. So, any question about OPT and where we're at with this stuff? Let's move into the OPT extension then. Say we've been working for a company for 10 months. 10 months is kind of a critical time, because they want to make sure that the next to last line here says work for 9 months or more of the 12 months of OPT. You have to be employed in OPT to be eligible for the extension. If you don't work at least a minimum of 9 months, you will not be granted an extension. So really important. And we've had some students that had some difficulty finding jobs sometimes. If they didn't really start working before they were, while they were on CPT or before they graduate, if they didn't start looking, it takes a while. This is a tough economy. But I have to say, we've had incredible results. I mean, unbelievable results with our grads. Getting great jobs and finding opportunities in a tough economy. But say a person was really just focused on their research, getting their thesis out of the way, doing everything that they needed to get through school, and they just didn't start their job search yet. Well, for that person, I'd recommend that maybe they apply a little later, because they can stay legally while immigration is processing their OPT application, which buys them a little more time. We didn't talk much about timing, but the timing of the OPT is, when you start, is really important. You can start the day after your completion of studies up to 60 days after, that grace period time. Any time in there you can apply. Actually, you can wait until after you graduate, and you can apply for OPT up to 60 days after your completion of studies. Now, OPT is going to take another 90 days to process it, which gives you an additional 3 months, and then you need to be working or find something. If you don't have any job, that's a way to cover yourself during that time. During those 2 months, 60 days plus 90 days, 5 months total, you cannot work. It's a problem. You are limited. You cannot work legally anywhere. Until you have that EAD, you cannot start work. That's the one disadvantage of waiting, and why many of our students will start on CPT and then just flow right into OPT the next day. So it's no change for the employer. And that makes them very happy if they know they can count on you. The people that procrastinate and put it off are going to be in trouble, because the employers won't wait. If you're not eligible, they'll find somebody who is eligible for work. That's the problem. That's why we like to do everything early. Yeah.
Suppose a student working on CPT.
Yes.
So after working on 3 to 4 months, can he be converted to a OPT?
Well, you can. The benefit would be to stay on CPT until the end of their studies date, their completion of studies date, just to gain more time on the other end of it, for OPT. You're still only granted, if you start OPT earlier, it's going to end earlier. If you can extend on CPT, you've got up to a year or until your completion of studies date for CPT. Probably most students will want to save their OPT time for after they graduate, if they can. It's been my experience so far. Well, the OPT extension, you have to be in the STEM area: science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Those are the only areas. People that are in psychology, accounting, finance, whatever, they're not eligible. They're only eligible for 12 months. That's it. It ends. They do have to have a degree certificate or completed official transcript. Sometimes it takes about 3 months from the time you graduate to the time that you actually receive your diploma. And we've had some students that they were a little bit procrastinating, and they got going on the CPT a little bit early and just didn't get their thesis done. So they're working on OPT and they're trying to get their thesis done. When you're on OPT, you're going to work hard. I don't care who you are. They're going to work your butt off. And because employers, they want results. They want production. They don't care if you've got a thesis to do. So it's really hard. I encourage everybody, get that stuff done as much as possible before you start work, because it's hard to write creatively and research and all that when you're working 10, 12, 14 hours a day. It's tough. But at any rate, you need to have a completed certificate, a diploma, or you can get a letter from the registrar's office that states you've completed all requirements for your degree. That's okay. And you also have that I-765 form. Again, a $380 fee. You have to have that E-Verify employer that you fill out on the card there, and work for at least 9 months, as we said.
And at any point in time, you can always switch to an H1. You don't have to even be on OPT. You can go from being a student to H1 if somebody really wants to hire you. You can go that route.
So you mean to say directly we can get converted from H1 to H1?
Absolutely. Well, that's happened, yeah.
And from this paper, it says only 6 years for H1.
6 years for
Duration.
the H visa? Well, that's mostly true. Yeah, it comes, you get a 3-year period, and then you can apply for an extension for an additional 3-year period. It's possible to get even longer periods. That's what they like to use it for, is a 6-year period. The reason for that is, if a person's planning on working here 6 years, typically they would become a permanent resident during that 6-year period as well. And they can certainly do that within 6 years.
Is that the green card thing?
Yes, that would be the green card, and that's the next sheet that you're holding right there, is that green card process. Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. We've had students that have gone H1 right immediately, right, without going through any of this other stuff. Uh-oh, come on.
Just click on the screen somewhere. So the pop-up. Oh yeah.
There we go. So, some folks would like to stay a little bit longer. You know, obviously, CPT and OPT are benefits of being an F1 student. They're just benefits. As an F1, you're eligible to do those things. H1 is a whole different visa category. And so they've reserved 85,000 visas. 20,000 in the master's quota, in the general H1B category, 65,000. Every year, there's that many visas set aside for people for ages. And April 1st is the application. That's when it opens up. It shouldn't be deadline, that's when it begins. And so April 1st is the first day of the year that an employer can say, I'd like to sponsor you on an H visa. And typically, that would go until, say, October or so, sometimes even later. This year it was, I think, almost around the end of November before the visa quota was met, that they had all 85,000 of the visas. So it just goes until it's full. We also, a few years ago, it opened up on April 1st. On April 2nd, it was closed. 2 years in a row. Because they actually received over 100,000 applications for those visas on those 2 years.
So will they maintain a priority-based selection then? When who applied first, will get the job first?
You'd like to think so. Typically, in a normal year, yes. In those 2 years, they didn't know what to do. So they threw all those 100,000 applications into a big hopper, and they just started drawing out the first 85,000.
I think even now it's like that. The lucky
No, that's the lottery, the visa lottery.
Yeah.
That's
They
different.
have a few. That's a different thing. Totally different thing. Yeah, immigration. You can apply for the visa lottery, the H1 lottery, where just anybody can apply from anywhere in the world. Just get in on this thing.
Oh, but okay, India and China not eligible for that.
Indians are not eligible?
No.
Why not?
It's a diversity visa, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a diversity visa.
That means
there are
there's too many of you
Indians.
guys here already.
Yeah.
You're taking over the darn place. Okay. It is a diversity lottery. You're right. Okay. Well, April 1st, though, is the first date of the year that employers can say, hey, I'd like to hire you, and they're going to, for an employer to do this, it costs them some money, as you can see down below here. But October 1st is the first day that you can actually shift to that visa. So let's say you're on OPT, you graduated in whatever time, and you're going to be done in June. But what do you do from June to October? Anybody know what happens then? You have to leave the country because your visa isn't.
No.
Because you don't have permission. Do you know what that's called to cover that little gap in time?
That's called the cap gap, the H1 cap gap. What they've done in the last few years, they did this. In the past, people, they weren't stuck. They had to leave, and then they were there. Otherwise, they were here illegally. Because let's say you finished in June, you have 60 days to leave the country, July and August. What do you do in September? You're illegal, and so they had to leave. And now they cap gap is what they call, where they just fill that gap with if you're within the H1B cap, meaning you've been offered an H1, you can stay. They extend your OPT until October 1st. And I can do that right in my office. So it's not a big process, but you have to have the H1 approved first. But so October 1st, then people would leave the U.S. and get their new visa and re-enter. And that's where they have to take all their documentation with them, their history of everything, pay stubs, showing you've been working for this employer, letters from the employer, letters from me, letters from whatever, all the information that you need, the documents to show that you are, in fact, your history of I-20s showing your work experience and all that kind of stuff. Then you go and get your H1 stamped and you come back and you're an H from that point farther. The master's quota, they save 20,000 jobs or H visas every year for people with specialty kind of occupations and training. And you guys would qualify for that as a master's level. Bachelor's levels don't, and other specialty occupations don't. There's 20,000 reserved strictly for master's degree students only. So if you've got a master's degree, you're in. But you have to have it done. Now, well, I'm going to be getting my thesis done in another month. That doesn't work. The general H-1Bs are $65,000. Now, cost to employer, I put approximately $4,000. It varies. There's a thing called premium processing, where the employer can send it in and receive back an answer and an acceptance within 10 days. Costs $1,000. So sometimes they'll do that because they just want to know if they can plan on you in the future. But otherwise, it's about $4,000 for the company has to pay immigration attorneys. There's fees that have to be paid to immigration, and then you are working for them. They sponsored you. You're their worker. Doesn't mean you can't go somewhere else. And I put that in there, that it's portable, meaning you get approved for 3 years as an H. Let's say after a year of working with this company, you get an incredible offer from over here from another company saying, we'll pay you twice as much to run our networks and all this stuff, and we'll sponsor your visa. Well, you got a 3-year visa, you're only here a year, you give up your H, but these guys will sponsor a new H for you, and so you can move, but you're only going to get 2 years, because that's what you've got. 3-year period, you get 2 more years, then they can sponsor you after that for the additional 3 or whatever. But so they call it, it's portable, meaning that time can go with you. And you can jump ship. Obviously there's costs. You may run into some hard feelings with some people if you're moving around too much. Hopefully on OPT, it's an opportunity to see if there's a good fit. What you offer and what you want, is that what the company offers and what the company wants? Is it a good fit? If it isn't, go. Find another place, somewhere where you're happy, where they're happy. And you can do that. You can change on OPT. And there's nothing wrong with having that conversation. It may be a little awkward at first, saying, well, gee, do you sponsor H1s, and when could we do this? Because most people are like, oh, I want to do it now. They're very anxious, because you can only do it once a year, starting in April. So it's important to know if your company is E-verified, and do they sponsor those H's. Any question about anything that we've kind of covered so far? The CPT, the OPT, extension, the H1s?
I had to take a internship during the summer, and
Great.
it has to be like a full-time job.
Full-time, yep.
Yes.
Your major?
HRM.
health information management. So it's a required thing by your department, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, do I have to, register or sign up for CPT?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. For you, the other students that are citizens can just go and get their internship. But for you, if you look on the light yellow sheet, light blue sheet, it'd be the first one you picked up, I think, yeah. That one talks about curricular practical training. And when we're through here, which is now, or just about now, I'll spend just a few minutes because you missed that part of it. Any other questions? Good question, though, but I'll help you out, Suja. Anybody else? Well, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for your good questions. And we'll talk with you individually as you've got issues and concerns and opportunities. And I'm sure you're going to find some great opportunities. I'll tell you, it amazes me. It just always continues to amaze me that some of the jobs that are out there and some of the opportunities some of our students have gotten. I just want to encourage you to go out there and work hard and find them. Use those faculty, use those contacts, use that LinkedIn connections, see where people are at, find out, you know, who's from SUNYIT. At graduation time, I usually have that party at the farm. There'll be some students that have gone before you who are out there that will return. Find out what they're doing, who they're working for, where they've been, how they get into that, what do they recommend, you know, for opportunities. And making those connections are really important. And the faculty are the key because they've got thousands of students that have gone before you that are out there everywhere, and many in very good positions. And it's best to use those connections to try and find opportunities. There's good ones. Our students have been really knocking down great jobs. 55 to 65,000 is pretty average. And it's great. Year after year they've been doing that. I can tell you, last year I was just blown away. We had 3 people get jobs starting in the 90s, 90,000. But more normal to think 50s, 60s. There were some in the 70s, some in the 80s, but there are also a few in the 40s, you know, depending on where they're living. And you have to remember, too, just the big numbers make a difference depending on where you're at. Maybe 90,000 in Los Angeles is going to be equal to 60,000 in Utica, because you can live so much cheaper here. There's different ways of thinking about this whole thing. But there's a lot of things to consider. Use that Career Resources Office and be looking at the career fair and take advantage of everything you can. Well, very good. Thank you.